Welcome everyone to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center, sponsored by Fieldstone Communities Bainbridge Island. Fieldstone offers innovative and compassionate care, and they are now accepting residents. They also offer day stay and respite programs. Call 360-689-4314 to schedule a tour of Fieldstone's beautifully appointed apartments on Rolling Bay today. And I'd also like to acknowledge that the Senior Community Center is on the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Suquamish tribe, the people of the clear salt water. We honor them and we are grateful for their hospitality. All right, well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. As you may be aware, today we're going to be talking about caregiver support. And I'm so happy to have with me Joy Sprague, who is our facilitator for the Caregiver Support group that's hosted through Island Volunteer Caregivers. So Joy, thank you so much for being here. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the different programs and resources that Island Volunteer Caregivers offer to individuals and family members who are caring for a loved one. So we're going to cover a few things today, but I do want to get started by having Joy just share with us a bit about herself, and then also to talk about the Caregiver Support group.
Thank you, Katie. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Caregiving is very close to my heart, and the Caregiver Support group that started many, many years ago, I think 2012, I think that it was started in 2011. And I joined shortly thereafter as I was caregiving for my granddaughters. I ended up with 3 of my granddaughters when they were under 5. So the support group really helped me through that very difficult time. And now it's transitioned and I am caring for my mother. So I'm a peer as well as a facilitator. So we meet the 2nd and the 4th Tuesday of every month. We have between 7 and 12 participants that join. It's a hybrid caregiver support group, which means that you can either call in via Zoom or you can be at the IVC conference room. And it's open to everybody. You can be caregiving for a family member. You can be caregiving for a friend. We run the gamut from people that have brain injuries, that they're caring for a loved one in that particular situation, or someone that has Alzheimer's, dementia, that category. And then we have people that are caregiving for somebody that has more physical ailments or both. It's very interesting because it kind of ebbs and flows. And we do often have people that are caregiving for a spouse, and then on occasion, people that are caring for children.
I'm so glad you bring that up, Joy, because I know a lot of times traditionally we think of caregiving, being, with a spouse or a parent, but I mean, it's really true. I know there are folks out there that are possibly caring for, a sibling, caring for a child, caring for another family member, even some long distance caregiving, I know can happen. So I think it's really great to just sort of like, for those of us who may not think of caregiving in that way, but that there's all sorts of different people in our lives that we could find ourselves acting as caregivers for.
Absolutely. And you brought up another really good point, Katie, is it's like the person you're caregiving for does not have to live in your home. It doesn't mean that you're having direct hand-on-hand contact with them every day. It doesn't mean your life is going to be more or less difficult if your loved one is out of state or if they're in a facility. Or, a lot of times we'll see a transition in our group where someone has a care receiver in their home and then they end up transitioning. In fact, one of the people in our group right now had somebody transition just this last week to a care facility. And that in itself can be a very difficult place. And to be able to come to a support group where it's completely confidential and where they feel like they have empathy for the other from and for the other people in the group. It's a very close knit, almost, I like to call it a bit of a sacred environment, because they can say anything they want, they can share anything they want. Whereas if a lot of times if we share things with our friends, they oftentimes don't get what's going on internally in the family and how difficult it can be. Let's just go have coffee. Well, having coffee for someone who is caregiving means that you have to find somebody to come and either stay with your family member, or you need to make other arrangements so that you can actually get there. You have to sometimes change your schedule around for the person that you're caregiving for. So there's a lot that goes into it. I like to say that when you're caregiving for someone, it's like you're caregiving for two people, because it's like that one person takes up twice as much amount of time and space and energy to care for. And it's really important to care for ourselves so we have the capacity to be able to stay with that person as long as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a great way to put it. Joy, so for folks who have maybe experienced a support group before, can you kind of walk us through what that looks like if somebody's just like, I don't even understand what happens in a caregiver support group, or what do you even talk about? Or can you just share a little bit about that?
Absolutely, no problem. It is daunting for people that have not shared in a group format before. I used to run the National Alliance for Mental Illness Support Group for family members. And it could be daunting when people walk into the room, not sure, if other people's situation is similar to theirs, or if they're going to fit, or how much to share. And so, when we start, basically, we give everybody 1 to 5 minutes. We try and start and stop on time. And I'll let Katie share the guidelines that you probably can't see behind her after I'm done with kind of the little rough agenda. But we try and start and stop on time. We give space for people that are coming in to kind of settle, and people that are getting on Zoom to hook up, making sure that, the space is quiet for them. It's only for the caregiver. We do not have a class right now or a group for the care receiver and the caregiver at the same time. I know there's other groups that do that throughout the county, but at this point, they come in, we do a centering exercise, and it's very organic, because sometimes people will come in with very, very high energy, and sometimes it's a good spot to use that energy. And then sometimes it might be better to figure out what they need. So I just kind of read the room. It's more like a felt sensation when people come in, whether they need 5 minutes of a silent, time just to center. If they've just been going, you kind of know when people come together what's going to be good, reading a poem or anyway. So we start with that for about 5 minutes, and then usually we have 1 or 2 new members each time that will pop in or out. So we like to go around and just say our name, who we're caregiving for, and just like a little snippet about, where they're at this week. And so roughly that takes 10 or 15 minutes. So everybody's familiar with who's in the room. And then we go ahead and, based on our guidelines and intentions, we share. And usually I try and start facilitating. I mean, I'm just basically holding space for people. I just see who basically came in, who might be having the most difficult time, and ask them if they want to start. And then usually roughly it's about 10 to 15 minutes of just complete sharing. And I really try and provide an environment that uses reflective listening skills. So as one of our guidelines say, we try not to interrupt. We try not to give advice, and we really stay in the moment. People don't realize how powerful it is to be just listened to for that amount of time without somebody trying to interject or tell them what to do, particularly when they have such a difficult situation. Oftentimes I'll say to people people that are caregiving don't even have time to go use the restroom half the time during the day. They don't have time to grab a cup of coffee. And so when they sit there in that moment, it's kind of like a big sigh. It's like, oh, I get a chance just to catch my breath and be here. We've had some people that are older, they'll just like kind of doze, that they didn't get their nap for the day or this or that. So it's everything is okay in the group. Everything is okay. You might be up all night long caregiving for somebody. But it's kind of like a sacred space. So, and then we do, after everybody has a chance to share, we go around and we may do a little bit of closing. Sometimes I will ask them what they're going to do for themselves this next time before we meet again. What's one thing you're going to do, whether it be take a walk with a friend, go out for coffee, organize something that you've been wanting to organize that you haven't been able to, whatever it is. Just somebody says, oh, I'm going to get a massage this week, or, I'm going to go talk to my daughter, my grandkids, just something different that is for them, that is not in their day-to-day wheelhouse that they end up doing every single day. That's roughly the format. Again, it's very loose and very organic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Joy. And I love that. Like, a couple of things that really stood out to me were, I know you talked before about just reading the room, and I appreciate that so much, because I imagine on any given day when folks come in, they may be needing something really different than they did the last time, or just as a group, kind of, where people are at. So I just love that. And then I also really love, and I think this is just a really important and special thing about having support groups, is that it's not always about trying to like solve a problem or come up with the answer or anything like that. And I think that's something that I know any one of us who've been listened to or just given space to really share and talk about what we're feeling, like what a gift it is to be able to just kind of say what you need to say in that moment without feeling like, people are going to try to, I know it's so human nature of us to want to help solve people's problems and, come up with solutions. And I think sometimes, when you mentioned to talking to like maybe friends or family or neighbors, I think we're inclined to want to do that as a way to support that person. But I really think it's just such a gift to be able to have space held to just, talk about what it is you need to talk about without feeling like there's going to be this response. So I just think that's really cool.
It is. And they all seem to really respond that way. And that's not my voice. That's shared from caregivers. They'll be like, I try and talk to my friend and they just don't get it. They just don't understand why I can't do this today or why I can't do that. And so a lot of times caregivers are very isolated. We think, oh, they've got all these things to do and they're just going to reach out. They often don't even have a moment to reach out to ask for the help they need. And oftentimes this space is the first place they'll go. And several of our caregivers have been with the group for some time. And we had someone that was needing more assistance this last time. And so it was wonderful because she had not been on for a long, long time. And we could kind of just sit back and give her even more space to share. And it was really healing for her. And she, just felt very heard, and that all her feelings were valid. And I think that's one thing there's a lot of remorse and guilt and shame that comes with, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. Because in retrospect, as a caregiver, it's like, oh yeah, I could have done this or I could have done that differently. But at the time, you only know what you know. And so to have a whole room of people sit there and say, hey, I've been there. It's like, we say this, don't should on yourself, you're doing the very best you could. And to have people leave and their faces be lighter and feel like they were really filled up is just, it's a gift for me to be in that space and witness as well. We're all going to be there, right? We're all going to be caregiving for someone, or we're going to be, a care receiver, probably both in this, where we are. So if we can learn how to do it better and we can gain support, and have this like village. I kind of look at our room as like a village environment. And my goal as a facilitator is just to hold the vessel so that people in the room feel secure, nurtured, safe, so they can be vulnerable and they can share what they're really dealing with deep down. There's a lot of grief for caregivers. They are losing their person over and over and over, piece by piece by piece, every day. So if they can just leave with a little bit of hope or a little bit of joy for that moment, sometimes that's enough to get them not only through the day, but through the week, or, it just kind of puts them over the edge where they can do one more thing maybe that would be helpful for them.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. I mean, it just seems like it creates this wonderful opportunity to help people feel maybe just a little less alone. That there are others that are experiencing something similar, and to find a way to be compassionate with others, and then also with yourself as you're going through this process.
Absolutely, it's so isolating. And it's lonely. A lot of times, if their care receiver has Alzheimer's or dementia, they're losing that communication ability with that person. Over time, the things that they did with that person are no longer, and it's very traumatic. And it usually comes in waves. They don't see it. They're just going day to day, trying to make it through the day, and they don't see it until all of a sudden something happens. It's like, oh my gosh. And then something this catastrophic event happens where the person left the house and nobody knows where they are. And so it was very trauma inducing for both the care receiver and the caregiver. Oftentimes, sometimes the care receiver will be like, oh, I didn't even know there was a problem. But the caregiver is left, whoa, with all of that amount of feelings to deal with and hold. So yeah, it can be really challenging.
I bet. I'm just going to take a quick pause here just to open it up if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask Joy. Just as a reminder, everybody's muted. So if you do want to jump in, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Or if you're familiar with how to write in the chat box, I'm monitoring that as well. So you can always type in a question. Hi, Misty.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah,
okay.
Go right ahead.
Hi, Joy. It's so good to meet you and hear about the program. I run the independent living program here on Bainbridge, so I assist the seniors here on the island with home safety modifications, as well as those coming home from rehab. So my question is, I didn't catch what days you offer the service for this class.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. You're such a resource for our seniors. We meet the 2nd and the 4th Tuesday of the month at 2 p.m. and it usually lasts till 3:30. We're hoping to get that so it can go every week, but that's a little down the road when I can get a co-facilitator with me and we can, ramp it up a little bit. But we're just trying to kind of see how this all ebbs and flows with the I like to call it hybrid Zoom and in the room.
And then is there a way that folks can sign up, or do they just show up?
Oh, that's a great question, Misty. Basically, people can show up, but usually it's very rare that I have somebody that just pops in that hasn't heard about it from somebody else. It's a lot of word of mouth. A lot of times people at IVC will recommend the support group. And, they'll have volunteers that are out and a family member is just like beyond able to cope. And so that's one way that the care volunteer can go out and the caregiver can actually come to the support group. So it's a very win-win situation for both.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Misty. Joy, do you want me to go ahead and bring forward?
Yeah, I think if you wouldn't mind reading those caregivers, we don't really have rules. We have intentions and guidelines. And what I want to say about these is that in order for us to really have a sacred space so that everybody feels like they can share, we want to make sure that we have that space held. So there's a container to put all of this in. So these group intentions and guidelines were actually put together by the caregivers. We went around with some just different guidelines and different rules and different things, and said, what is going to be the most meaningful for this group at this time? What do we need? And you can see there, we all need to be heard, understood, and loved. Compassionate listening with open hearts creates a sacred space. And that's what we're really, really trying to do. So I shared before, we aim to start and stop on time. There's 100% confidentiality, and sharing is just optional. So oftentimes somebody won't feel like sharing at the beginning of the group, but by the end of the group, they've heard everyone else share, and they're really open to being able to do that. And we want to make sure in that sacred space that everybody else is quiet. Sometimes it takes people a long time to be able to get to the place where they're able to express their voice. And when they start to speak, if somebody jumps in with another thought or another voice, they lose their train of thought and they are not able to actually get out everything that they want to share. So that's really important. Respect is really important. We try to have respect, reverence, and mutuality in the room. We really just want to be able to have that safe space. So just knowing that we're not judging one's viewpoint as being more or less than someone else's. Everybody's perspective and stories is valid. And so being mindful of the time of everybody in the room. If there was 22 people in the room, everybody isn't going to get 10 minutes to talk that week. So some people kind of have been there a long time, make sure that the other people have more time to talk if they need it. And it makes us stronger to be able to share what we're going through. And as I mentioned, it's like those thoughts and feelings, they're all valid. And when we can keep it in the present moment, when we're talking about what's going on today, yesterday, right in this moment, what is on our hearts right now, that's where people can get the most help. And so if they start going into their story about, some of these stories go on 20 years, 15 years ago, my loved one, fell down and outside and they hit their head and then they were in the hospital 10 years ago. I mean, by the time we get to the story, they aren't helped and nobody else is. So these guidelines are ones that, they can actually stick to, and we can actually point back to them if we need to at some time during the group. Again, we're there for empathy and support for each other. We know that caregivers burn out. This is something that most hospice workers, years ago, I was a hospice respite caregiver, and caregiver burnout is so hard because we want to make sure caregivers can be there through the finish line, whatever that means, whether their relative gets better or is more well to be able to live a different way, more independently, or if they end up dying and passing away. We want to make sure that caregiver can make it to the end of that. You'll find us laughing in this group. There are so many things that are funny that happen during caregiving. And so that can be appropriately, it can be funny. And we really promote an inclusive and accepting environment for everyone. No one is left out of the group. So yeah, that's our guidelines. And I am so grateful that I have such a wonderful group that was able to come up with these guidelines together.
Yeah, I think that is so cool. I love the fact that this was something that the group had decided upon, and it makes so much sense that it's, like those that are participating are the ones that are setting the guidelines in a way that works for everyone that's going to be participating. So I think that's very cool.
One of our members is the ones that said, oh, we don't want the word don't in there. So we took the don't word out. We wanted everything on the positive side. So, it was just really a group effort. Yeah.
It's wonderful. And I love that there's space for humor. And I mean, I know that obviously that can be really difficult, in times when we're feeling overwhelmed and stressed and going through a lot of feelings. So I think that's really wonderful that, when the moment is right, to be able to find some joy and to have some laughter with others. So that's great.
Sometimes those humors can be tears of laughter, and sometimes they turn to tears of sorrow and tears of joy. And it's like, that's all good. It's all valid.
Totally. Yep. Thank you. Any other questions for Joy? No, Joy, thank you so much for sharing with the group. And I did want to just take a moment to talk about some other services and resources that are available to folks. So again, I know we have this wonderful caregiver support group, and that provides so much to our folks. In addition to the caregiver support group at IVC, we do also provide services such as respite. So I know sometimes, again, for folks that are either coming to participate in the group or, just wanting to get out for a walk, running to the grocery store, things like that. We do have volunteers that can come into the homes and stay with loved ones. So that way, the caregiver can get out for a little while. I know many of you know us for transportation services, so that's something certainly that IVC can provide. But also I know with caregiving, because time for doing some basic errands and things can be really, really challenging. So that's just another thing for folks to keep in mind. We have volunteers that can, head out and pick up some groceries for folks. So if that helps to take one thing off of, a person's to-do list, picking up prescriptions, things like that. Also something that IVC can provide as a service to folks who are caring for a loved one. And I do always tell people, if you're not sure if it falls within something that IVC can do, please don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. It may be something that we can provide. And even if it's not, it may be that we're aware of another resource that's available. So I always tell folks, please don't hesitate to call us. And I'll just give you the phone number now for those who are watching. It's 206-842-4441. And again, that is the line for Island Volunteer Caregivers. Any other questions while we've got Joy here? Okay, well, Joy, anything else that you can think of that you want to share with us today?
Oh my gosh, Katie, I'm just so grateful to be here and so wonderful. I am just blessed all the time I get to do this work, because being in space with people in this environment is just it's just so gratifying and fills me up. And yeah, I'm just grateful to be able to do it. So thank you for letting me share it with the rest of our community.
Well, thank you, Joy. And I know I've said this to you before, but I think truly you are just such a wonderful fit for this work, for this mission. So we're so grateful. We're grateful for you holding this space for folks in our community. Again, for anyone watching, if you'd like to get in touch with Joy or just to learn more about the caregiver support group, to participate, or again, if you're just looking for resources, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at IVC. Our number again, 206-842-4441. And again, Joy, thank you so much for joining us today.